In this video, we're going to take a look at how you can change the image size of the document that you're working on, or the image or photograph that you're working on. So to do that, we can go to the top and click on Image in the menu bar and go down to Image Size. You can see Alt-Control-I or Option-Command-I is a shortcut key here to change the image size. And this is going to change the size of the entire image and document, not just the canvas that's working on. So we'll click on that, and we have some information about this image. You can see here that it's 7 megabytes, it's 1920 by 1280, and then we can change the image size here. And we also have a preview of the image. Now we can't see it because of the size of the image, but if we zoom out, we can see that image. So it takes us about between 15 and 20% just to see the image here. Now we can go ahead and use any of these presets. So if I say fit to, it will automatically fit the resolution to these presets that we have here. These are some common screen resolutions and common print resolutions, postcards and posters and different things of that nature. And then we can also load or save presets and delete them. So we can create some custom presets, maybe some strange dimensions that you use often. You could create that preset and then load and save those out here. We can go ahead and change the dimensions. Here you can see the numbers, and then we can tell if we want to work in percentages, pixels, inches, centimeters, millimeters, points, picas, or columns. So let's go ahead and change this to pixels because we know it's 1920 by 1280, and whenever we change that, we can see those numbers reflected here. There's also a lock, so you can, if we change these numbers, let's say 3000, the lock will keep that aspect ratio, and so it'll change this appropriately. So depending on whatever we change this to, it's going to keep the same aspect ratio of that image because it's locked down. Now if I unlock it, I can change them independently, but what you can see happens is that it stretches and squashes because it's not keeping that nice uniform aspect ratio. So let's go ahead and turn that back 1920 by 1280. We'll turn that lock on here. And below that, we see we also have the resolution. Now, the resolution isn't locked down. It's in pixels per inch. You can change it pixels per centimeter if that works better for you. And this is basically how many pixels make up an inch inside of this image. So if we zoom in here, it's going to be a little hard to see, but you can see the actual pixels that make up this image, the individual dots that are creating this image and the colors that are creating it. Now we can change that resolution to, say, a smaller number. So if we turn this down, let's say in half, it has less pixels per inch to make up this image, and it's going to look a little grainier. Now you might not be able to see it so well here, but it's actually going to change the amount of pixels, and it automatically will adjust the width and height. Even though they're not locked down, because we have less pixels per inch, it has to change the width and height of this image to match what's going on here. So if we only have 10 pixels per inch, well, the document's a certain size, and so it has to cut it down to 64 by 43 just to get those 10 pixels per inch across. So we can change that here, and of course increasing the resolution is going to increase the size. Now what's happening is we are resampling this image, and it's resampling in an automatic fashion. So what is resampling? Well, resampling is basically changing the pixel size depending on the resolution and how many pixels per inch there are. Whenever we change this, Photoshop has to figure out how it's going to handle these little pixels. It might need to make them bigger or smaller. It might need to add pixels or get rid of pixels. And whenever it's adding any pixels, a thing happens which is called interpolation, which means it looks at 2 pixels and it needs to add a third pixel. It'll figure out the closest color or the closest dynamic between the 2 pixels and stick one in the middle, and it has to use algorithms to figure that out. So resampling resampling is the changing of these pixels, and we can resample in different ways. So to see how this works, let's go ahead and up the resolution here. So we're going to change this to 600 pixels per inch so that there's a little more pixels within every inch, going for a smoother graphic. And we can change the resampling here. So we can do preserve details, enlargement. Now when we do this one, it actually isn't showing much of a difference. So the automatic resampling is kind of using the same preservation for this image. However, if we change it to preserve details 2.0 or bicubic smoother, we can actually see a change in the image. And what's happening is it's interpolating those pixels to look a little smoother than using, say, the preserved details. There's also sharper, so it's going to create some sharper looking pixels there. And then we have some other things such as regular, bicubic, nearest neighbor, and bilinear. Now these are all mathematical expressions of how it's interpolating this information. It's a lot probably to take in. If you're new to Photoshop, I wouldn't worry too much about this, and I would leave this to automatic. Let the program handle this automatically for you unless you kind of know what you're doing, and then you can change out your resolution and your width and height separately. And if you don't want to resample, you can unclick this box and you can adjust this image without any resampling happening. But typically what you'll want to do is you'll just want to go ahead and change the image dimensions here with the image size dialog box to whatever you see fit. So if we turn this back to pixels and say we want half of this, we can calculate that. Or just go to percent and say 50%, and that will actually make this image half as large as it was originally. So now at 28%, we can see the full image here, and you can see that it's changed it to 960 pixels by 640 pixels, and it reduced the image size from 7 megabytes to 1.76 megabytes. But you also need to keep in mind that if you were to reduce this to 50%, but then displayed it on something that's 1920 by 1280, it's going to have to stretch that image, and we're going to see more of the pixels. So you need to be careful with your image sizes and how you're using them. But if you need to change the image size at all, you can do it right here with this dialog box. And then whenever we are ready with the settings, we can just click the OK button, and it will resize that for us. Now over in the document properties, you can see it's 960 pixels by 640. We're still at 300 pixels per inch, and we're at 66.7% magnification, so it shrunk down a little bit. If we zoom in one time to 100%, we can actually see that full image dimensions here. So that is how you resize an image inside of Photoshop.